time for Greg Bishop and the Council Roundup.
And a lot from last night's Springfield City Council meeting. We'll talk about debt forgiveness for property owners who owe the city fines. We'll also delve into the labor issues with the fire department and EMS. But up first, a different set of labor issues when it comes to project labor agreements and making the city's ordinance uniform moving forward for projects over $50,000. And you had a large contingent of individuals at City Council last night there to support the ordinance. And among those was labor leader Brad Shivey, who had with him a packed audience of laborers who were supporting the measure. And then ultimately, again, what the measure does, and last night was a full city council meeting, which, by the way, we're in the council roundup brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch. Don't forget about delivery, Head West Subs. But last night, the ordinance up for consideration dealt with making city code say that any contract for construction projects over $50,000 must have a project labor agreement with certain provisions laid out, including diversity provisions, to make sure that it's not just a local workforce, but it's also a diverse local workforce. Brad Shivey, local labor leader, he was there to address this ordinance and push for its passage. Here's some of what he had to say last night at the Springfield City Council meeting.
One of the things that I know that people have said is that you have to be a union company to bid. One of the things that I know that people have said is that you have to be a union company to bid PLAs. It's absolutely not factual. It's a story that people say to mislead elected officials. I, as a non-union construction company, could bid a public works project, 100%. The project labor agreement is so special because you have no ties either to a pension, to welfare, to benefits, or contract once that project labor agreement project is over. So I can bid the project as a non-union company, hire these men and women to work for my company, perform the work, make the profit, lay them off, pay the benefits, successful project. So when people say that a PLA is about only making it where unions can do the work, it's just not factual.
So Shivey was there to, of course, support this ordinance, and he talked about some current jobs that are on the way that don't have these PLAs in place.
We have 3 PLAs that this city's doing currently, right now. No one said a word about it. There's 3 fire station PLAs going. The difference in what you would pass this evening is the PLA from this day forward will have mandatory minority language. The 3 PLAs you're working under right now have none. None. No diversity language whatsoever. This takes care of that these individuals who are on these projects look like the community, and they have a better life.
So Brad Shivey, again, local laborer, supporting this. Others supporting the measure. Alderwoman Connolly talks about the importance of this universal language.
What we are putting forward is a level playing field so that every developer who comes in, every project that needs to get started, people know what our priorities are in this community, what our expectations are, and what the level, the standard that we intend to hold people to, so that we build our community in a lot of ways.
So one of the questions that was asked was from Alderman Williams about what's really changing here. If you've got all these contracts that already have PLAs, Corporation Council responds.
We've never required a project labor agreement. Prior to this, Section 3815 of our code said that PLAs were authorized, but again, they're not required. This ordinance in the operative language lays out 9 different factors, requires project labor agreements for projects over $50,000, and lays out 9 factors that need to be discussed in those project labor agreements.
So again, a little bit of an explanation of the change that's coming. Alderman Sean Gregory saying he supports this measure.
Because I know people in our community every day, every time I see somebody, every time I walk in the store, and people in our community are going to know every time I walk in Jamal's, there's somebody hunting me down for a job because they need them. And this to me, how I'm reading it, gives us a little more control to make those things happen.
So
for sure.
You've got this measure that does a variety of things, but Alderman Donilon made a point that was reiterated by Alderman Redpath last night.
We've seen too many years where we had to bring things in front of the city council, and Alderman Donilon hit it right on the head. They bring the projects to us, and we'd ask about PLAs, and then we'd have to end up going back and forth and back and forth. We won't have to do that now. Now it's spelled out on the front end that this is what our priorities are, and this is what we need. We need the best trained, the hardest workers, the ones that know what they're doing. And what we're talking about with the diversity inclusion is to get more jobs out there in the community for everybody in our community, not just the favored, but everyone. And this is what this is going to do.
So obviously it's time for a vote, and the outcome of the vote was unanimous. Here's the reaction from the audience.
And the motion carries with 10 voting yes, 1 voting no.
It's always interesting to see when the council chambers are this full for a particular ordinance, because it's definitely not that full. But
We're gonna,
you can see once this ordinance passed.
Everybody else that's here for the rest of the meeting can stay. Thank you for your attendance.
Everybody gets up from the audience. And it was almost standing room only. I mean, there were people packed all the way out into the hallway. So obviously, a big support for the ordinance at last night's Springfield City Council meeting. It is the Council Roundup, review of Springfield City Council happenings. We'll get to more of it, including an ordinance dealing with the EMS and fire departments and what was really a conflict in labor agreements and how they move forward with providing medical care and getting reimbursed for that medical care that the taxpayer-funded EMS system through the fire department has with those who are privately funded EMS. So stay tuned. We'll get to that conversation next here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Council Roundup brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to Head West. Their downtown location open for lunch. And don't forget about delivery. Head West Subs. Got to correct something. It wasn't unanimous, that measure to require PLA agreements with certain provisions did not pass unanimously. Got 10 votes, but out of 11 votes cast, Alderman Williams Jr. was present. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. Several people texting me, letting me know that was the outcome. It was drowned out by all the applause, but ultimately it did pass. It is the Council Roundup from last night's Springfield City Council meeting. Typically they meet on a Tuesday, but Wednesday they met because Tuesday was National Night Out. So you had city officials hosting events across the city. So last night's city council meeting jam-packed with all kinds of other things. And one also deals with the issues that arose from Springfield Fire Department having to act as emergency medical services despite an ambulance showing up. So what happened there? Well, you've got laborers within the fire department not happy that they don't feel like they were being compensated properly, and that led to this next ordinance that is up for consideration at last night's Springfield City Council meeting. And let's go ahead and get into it here and hear what they had to debate about.
Ordinance approving a memorandum of understanding between the Springfield Firefighters IAFF Local 37 and the City of Springfield regarding the assignment of new and different duties and responsibilities to bargaining unit employees in connection with providing supplemental advanced life support, ALS, and intermediate life support, ILS, care on private ambulances. The chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2023-337 on final passage.
So this stemmed from a labor dispute, and Alderman Williams wanted to bring about an amendment to this ordinance, and here's that discussion.
If Amendment 1 were to pass with the additional language, we would need to send that back to their attorneys, and it would become a counteroffer because we are
Corporation
adding
Counsel
additional terms to what's in here, so they would have the opportunity to reject this, and then we would have to come back to council with approval or go back to the table with the union.
I mean,
Alderman Hanauer.
that just concerns me because to me the negotiations were done, and it's up to us to vote it up, yes or up or down. That's kind of my feeling, because we take it back there. Potentially they could say, well, then, yeah, we'll do this, but we want this, again, we get back into negotiations. And so I'm concerned about that.
So it could delay things even more. And Alderwoman Conley also opposing any idea of an amendment because, well, it would postpone resolution.
I will not be voting to support this amendment, Alderman Williams, simply because I don't want to drag this negotiation out. I think the city's already lost before, a significant labor decision. This has been negotiated. And I do think that these decisions should come back to us. That's clearly already in the MOU. So,
and that's kind of what the amendment would have done, is required other things to come back to the city. Here's Alderman Gregory.
We're going to pass this, and this is going to add about $500,000 onto our budget and things of that nature. If we go back 2 years, I don't know how long the back pay is going to go, but it could be $800,000, almost $1 million onto it, and we'll have some things to look at. So I think this ordinance here, or this amendment, was an attempt to ensure that these type of issues go back to the bargaining table, have a group continue to work on the intercept agreement that we have, and to recapture funding. It is unfair for this city and its taxpayers to do work and not get paid back for it. So our firefighters are going to go in, they're going to do their thing, they're going to ride to the hospital. It's over. They're going to come back. They're out of service, and then the ambulance company is going to get paid for it, and we're not. That's something that we got to make sure is addressed.
Well,
and that's what they're looking to address with this ordinance. Alderman Williams and the mayor and others talking about the amendment that he's looking to have on this.
This arbitration and this judge, did they order us to do 1%?
No,
did they? Okay, so no, they didn't order us to do 1%. Did they order us to do retroactive, to go backwards?
Yes.
They did.
We were ordered to make whole members of the bargaining unit for any losses incurred during the time of the alleged in the grievance.
So I guess the losses would be riding in the ambulance.
It'd be what was alleged, which was work services that were not being compensated.
So that's the ultimate question there. Work services not being compensated. Alderman Redpath, he chimes in on this amendment.
If we pass this, doesn't the fire department have the right to come back and say you changed what was in the agreement we signed, correct?
It has to go back.
Right. So they could come back and, for example, say we want three
I'm
members.
not necessarily opposed to the committee or who serves on it. I just don't want to muddy up the water on this thing. Bring back another ordinance and let's vote on it that way.
Yeah.
It's cleaner.
So we may hear more about Alderman Williams's motion, but the vote on the amendment of the ordinance. Let's go ahead and hear that
Mayor,
outcome.
you have 6 noes, 3 yeses, and 1 present.
Okay, so the amendment fails.
So the amendment failed. Moving on now, Alderwoman Conley talking about the ordinance in particular, and she hopes it leads to something that will be city-operated medical services.
Support about this memorandum of agreement is the fact that it at least finally envisions the city establishing a municipal ambulance service, that we're going to be looking into this, that this is a service that we are going to be looking to provide, because as you've said last week at Committee of the Whole, it's not just that our firefighters are great guys and women, they are, but they have an obligation as the highest level, the highest certified provider of care to maintain contact with that patient as they're traveling. There are other ramifications if they abandon a patient. They're the highest level of care. Absolutely.
So Alderwoman Conley likes the idea of city-operated EMS service, and something that I think raises the question about the difference between public and private services that are offered in this capacity. We'll hear from Alderman Redpath some more, Alderwoman Purchase, Alderman Carlson, Alderman Rockford, and others. So we'll finish up this conversation, and then we'll get into the conversation about debt forgiveness for property owners who racked up fines and fees, and how previous administration, we never heard about this, but apparently it was ongoing. But now with a new administration under Springfield Mayor Misty Buscher, they're actually having to debate these issues of tens of thousands of dollars of property fines being forgiven. So a different approach, and maybe that's going to mean we're going to hear a lot of these types of conversations coming up in the future, but we'll get to that coming up next half hour. It is the Council Roundup, brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch, Head West Subs. Back with the Council Roundup, brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch. And don't forget about delivery, Head West Subs. Delicious soups, too. Check it out. All right, back to last night's council meeting after being postponed from Tuesday to Wednesday for National Night Out. I know people are like, it's Thursday. Usually do it on Wednesdays. Well, when they move the meeting, we also move the roundup. But the conversation is about changing the firefighters' contract to allow for firefighters to get compensated for acting as EMS despite a ambulance arriving. A lot of times, these firefighters were considered having the highest level of certification for care, so they had to be with the patient all the way to the hospital, but they weren't getting paid for it. So a change to the labor agreement with firefighters in front of alder people, and Alderman Chuck Redpath sounding off on the importance of getting this addressed in the city's contracting.
I mean, they're all certified. They could be all the way up to the chief of police is certified. And are you? So all the way across the board.
Yes, I am. Yes.
So all the way across the board. My point being, all the way across the board are the deputy chiefs and the captains and the are they jumping in the fire in there?
So everyone is possibly jumping in there. So we always send 2 people in the back of an ambulance. The big thing is our people are upgrading the care. So it's only when they have a BLS ambulance our people jump in. And so, yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to who it might be on any given call. It could be any person there. So
again, the question about the cost here could cost $500,000, maybe $1 million added onto the contract. We'll touch on that some. Here's Alderman Gregory.
Ask for a point of order.
Point of order, Corporation Counsel. If a member of this council is going to recuse themselves from a vote, should it be proper for them to speak on the very ordinance that they're going to recuse themselves for?
Yes, I could speak.
So, she is not recusing herself from the vote. I believe she's voting present.
Mm-hmm.
So she is allowed to speak on the topic. Yes.
Thank you.
So this is about Alderwoman Purchase. She's apparently on a board associated with the ambulances, I think. But she does vote present, but asks questions.
Your ordinance, but before you come forward with your ordinance, we need to enforce the ordinance that we have with the number of ambulances that need to be out on the streets. Did that company call you back?
Yes, I have a meeting with corporate counsel on Friday, and I have a meeting with them the following week. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so again, Alderwoman Purchase voted present eventually. On to the question of cost. Alderman Carlson chimes in on that.
Madam Treasurer shot me a note earlier. We're at about $52 or $53 million.
Cash on hand.
It's something like this is why we have a fund balance, why we have a reserve. It's to protect the people who are protecting us, the frontline people, but most importantly, it's to help protect the citizens of Springfield who you're going out and trying to take care of a situation.
So again, could cost $500,000, if not more, maybe $1 million. But the city's got $50+ million cash on hand. Here's Alderman Rockford.
For the next two years, possibly, for the remainder of the contract. So there's a possibility of upwards of $500,000-$600,000. I know it's going to be budgeted into your budget, but I'm just saying. But there's still going to be effect. We're still going to have to.
Yes, it could be part of the total compensation package.
Thank you.
So eventually, the contract, as it plays out, is going to have this increase if this is approved, and then moving forward, other increases as well. How did the vote turn out? Racking up those numbers. Rockford, present.
Here. Sorry.
Purchase, present.
So the motion passes 7 voting yes and 2 voting present.
All right, there you go. So that's how the ordinance passed. So firefighters going to get a boost in pay, 1% boost. Next up, you've got debt forgiveness in front of all the people.
Reduction of fines and costs owed to the city of Springfield in the amount of $38,505 for a total payment to the city in the amount of $7,530 to settle Sangamon County Circuit Court cases 19-MR-723 and 21-MR-1195, City of Springfield versus Julian Randall and Weed Lanes for 2321 South 14th Street.
So apparently the previous administration, Langfelder, was allowing for debt forgiveness without it coming before the city council. New mayor, Misty Busher, says they want to hear about these, so that's why they're hearing about it.
I want to correct any misconceptions last week. Importantly, towards our inspectors, no inspector ever promised this young man anything. It was actually our administrative court judge, our assistant corporation counsel, who made a decision knowing all the facts of the case, what TCOs need to be done, how long it's been sitting, missed court dates. He was aware of all of those things, and he still made a judgment of only $3,000 just in December of 2022. We know the climate of our government at that point in time, and for whatever reason that didn't go. We're still trying to close this agreement.
So obviously a new administration, a different tact here when it comes to debt forgiveness. Instead of just doing it behind closed doors, they're bringing it in front of the entire city council. More from Alderman Gregory.
We have a lot of homes that are in dire need of repair. And I'm sure after this incident and learning that this young man will continue on to help rebuild a community in which he is from, as he has done with this house, and learn from the lessons and the mistakes and be able to make sure he asks, hey, are you in debt with the city? Are you at the per diem status? Has this house been sitting for 3 years? He will ask those questions. He will be well informed because he has went through this strenuous process with the city. And I encourage everyone to please just look at the facts and so we can move forward. Thank you.
Alderwoman Conley says she supports this effort and lays out her reasons why.
And I think the precedent that we're setting is that we're looking at each case and we're taking time to review the background and extenuating circumstances and how that comes into play with each particular situation that we're dealing with.
So again, this goes from like a $47,000 debt to a $7,000 debt that they're looking to forgive. More from Conley.
I do intend to support this, and I intend to support this with the understanding that every case that comes before us will be dealt on its merits, as a case-by-case basis, and we will be looking at all the circumstances around that case.
And these debts are from fines and fees that are tacked on to the property owner. And Alderman Redpath not too happy about the idea of opening up the floodgates.
We forgive this debt. We're going to open up the faucets. We're going to open up the faucets so everybody and their brother is going to come in here and say, hey, I got a debt I want to take care of. And that's not what we want. There was a lot of debt that was forgiven in this city for years, and we never knew about it. And now we're seeing things like this to come in front of us.
So again, it sounds like the floodgates have already been opened. So here's more from Alderman Redpath talking about his apprehensions.
But I don't think we do this. I think we're opening up the floodgates, and he's a habitual offender here. He 3 years ago, he still owes us money. So I think we need to reject this.
So it's Alderman Redpath. What does his vote ultimately turn out to be? We'll get to all of that and finish up the council roundup in the fourth segment this hour here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And we got to take a quick break. Well, an extended council roundup, and looking at last night's Springfield City Council meeting, the last issue they had on the docket was about the issue of debt forgiveness. Apparently, the previous administration was just forgiving debt, but now the new administration, Misty Busher, not doing that, and instead getting all these in front of the city council, and that includes having the individual who has this debt from fines and fees stacking up, Julian Randall. He did address the city council at last night's meeting, and here's some of what he had to say about the issue of the debt and it being forgiven. Here's Julian.
Yeah, I purchased the home. I didn't know anything about all the things. I didn't even know you had to have permits on homes when you get them. I thought that you just buy a home, you fix on it as you go along, and it's your home. You know, I didn't know that it was going to be time limits, and you got to pay for permits and everything like that. So yes, I did make all the mistakes with this stuff, but it's no way that I was trying to be malicious or run off from my homes or anything like that. When I very first got the home, I spent like a few $1,000s just from renting the big dumpsters. Those were like $500 a week, and I was taking those and throwing everything out of the house. The roof, the soffit, the fascia, the windows were busted. People ripped all the copper out of the house, all of the wiring. I had to tuck point the foundation. The house just was horrible. I didn't know that these things were going to cost this much money. And then COVID awfully came in, and things skyrocketed. Yeah. The lumber was high. Just everything was just high. I got discouraged by it. Yes, I did. I'm definitely sorry about that. I made a lot of mistakes with this house, but I learned a lot of stuff from this house also. I made mistakes, not even just only with this house, just period in life, you know what I'm saying? But I try to right all my wrongs. So whenever I got a chance, instead of just running off away from the house, I came back and I tried to fix the house up. All the way, and I fixed the house up. I got it done. I talked with Robert Hogue. We got an agreement going. I got everything done. I did everything, but Robert Hogue is no longer with the city anymore.
So, again, you've got the plaintiff there making his case. Alderman Gregory wants to amend the ordinance for debt relief.
Increase the amount of the total payment amount to the city from $7,530 to $16,530, which includes the $9,000 that Alderman Redpath spoke on to cover the house and what is due. I think that was for demo, and that would put a grand total of $16,530 being waived from the fine.
So what you have there is a change in the ordinance, in particular, increasing how much will actually be paid from, $7,000 to around $16,000. But that's still down from the 40-some-odd thousand that ultimately was on this particular property. But now it's going to include debt relief for two properties, meaning those two properties can be sold and move forward. And you had Alderwoman Conley chiming in on where this is headed from here. Here's Alderwoman Conley.
Alderman Redpath, you're not wrong. I think that faucet has already been opened because we as a council found out that debt was being forgiven that we had no idea was happening. The faucet has been running for a while.
Yeah.
We're just able to now assess what's coming through here.
So, interesting point, right? The floodgates have already been opened. Now it's just we get to see how severe the flood is. Alderman Redpath changing his mind, addressing the plaintiff.
If you would have went to the administrative hearings, you wouldn't be here because they probably would have figured out a settlement long time ago. So if I vote for this thing, I don't want to see you here no more. I want to tell you right now that this is a tough business. There's people sitting in this crowd that rehab houses all the time, and they run into the same problems. I used to own dozens and dozens of houses. I know what you're going through. It's tough. The thing is that before you take on a project, and I'm not trying to scold you, I'm just trying to help you here. Before you take on a project, know what you're getting yourself into. I'm going to vote for this only because we're clearing up two parcels of property, and then we're done with this. So. You understand where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to give you a little hardcore advice, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So, the measure ultimately passed, and the debt, most of it forgiven. But as you heard Alderman Redpath say there, it cleared up these two parcels now. So interesting. And I imagine that we may hear a lot more about these types of situations in the future, and that is your Springfield City Council Roundup. Hey, the Council Roundup brought to you each and every week by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch. Head West Subs. All right, be sure to check out the podcast. If you missed anything, you can go back and check out the YouTube video as well. Again, it's the Council Roundup. I'm Greg Bishop. Search for Bishop on Air really anywhere. Just Bishop on Air. It's that simple. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. Make it happen, and we can connect that way.